Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you're joining us from around the world. Welcome to episode 120 of Web3 Warriors, featuring Jan Liphardt, the founder of OpenMind, which is a business aiming to create the operating system for intelligent machines. Welcome, Jan. How are you doing today?
Thank you so much, David. Pleasure to be here.
Pleasure to have you. I'm really excited about learning about OpenMind and everything you're doing in the AI space. And we are joined today by Iris. You got your friendly robot there sitting with you, so very cool. It's not every day we get a robot on the show, so much appreciate that. And yeah, really looking forward to picking your brain and learning a little bit more about what you're doing in AI and how you think, creating a kind of operating system for intelligent machines will help us get to a place where these robots and AI is a lot more smart and safe and governable. So that's what we're going to be focusing on today. Welcome everyone to Web3 Warriors. My name is David Chrome. I'm the host, go by Chrome in the metaverse. And today we're really going to be looking at the intersection of blockchain and artificial intelligence, and specifically how we think that this technology combined with blockchain can create a safer and more ethical kind of evolution of AI. I've recently actually jumped onto a board that's the International Board of Ethics in AI, and it's part of our mission to really try to create a framework around, having best practices in AI and looking at the evolution of artificial intelligence and incorporating AI in a very ethical way. And so I'm really grateful to you, Jan, for joining us today and really being able to learn a little bit more from someone who's got boots on the ground in this industry and really actively working on what's happening. So on the last episode of Web3 Warriors, I mentioned attending Consensus in Toronto, where a lot of the conversation, although it was a crypto conference, was around artificial intelligence and stablecoins, of course, but artificial intelligence was a big part of the narrative. And there was a lot of the conversation around basically using these AI agents, as they're known, and the idea that you can use them to essentially do trading. And it was a lot of kind of economic value, right? And being able to create money for yourself out of the AI, which has always been kind of a main goal, I think, from a lot of people talking about AI and the development. However, at Web3 Warriors, we're always looking at social impact. We're always looking at really disrupting the status quo in a positive way and how we can adopt this new technology in ways that are actually going to help people and create more beneficial kind of opportunities for people that take on the technology, whether it's blockchain or AI, frankly. So really just one of the main reasons I invited Jan to join the show this week is because he wrote a really interesting article in CoinDesk that is titled Trusted Autonomy: Why Human Machine Teams Will Run on Crypto Networks. So I've been hearing a lot about this kind of concept that where blockchain marries AI, you get a lot more kind of accountability and transparency around how the data is being used. I'll give a shout out to Ben Goertzel and the SingularityNet team, because that has been one team that I've seen kind of having this conversation since I got into crypto about 5 years ago. So I know it's been there, but I haven't actually seen the rubber hit the road yet. And I think what OpenMind is working on, and what Jan kind of alluded to in the article that you wrote, I think really kind of hit the nail on the head with like how blockchain can actually improve things. And so we're trying to do the opposite of what OpenAI and Grok and a lot of these centralized entities are kind of doing with the data, and hopefully, bring it to the people and allow AI to actually be much more empowering, and importantly, we actually understand how data is being used and how our own data is feeding the AI machine. So without going on too much of a tangent on that, which I probably could, I want to turn it over to Jan and really get a little bit of background about where you're coming from and what brought you to OpenMind, and specifically this idea of blockchain being used to kind of help evolve AI in a more ethical way. So thank you, Jan, for joining. Maybe before we dive into OpenMind, could you just share a little bit about your background and what brought you to OpenMind and what you're working on now? And thanks again for joining the show.
Sure. Well, like lots of people, I've been fascinated by robotics since I was a little kid. And I'm sure for most of us here on this podcast, we probably have memories of cartoons or movies or books that we read as children that showed us this amazing world where humans are working with or collaborating or hiding from thinking machines or robots that have, gone off the reservation. And for me as a kid, that was just a fascinating world to contemplate what that could look like. And for anyone in technology right now, we're seeing the birth of a set of technologies that raise many, many questions about society and work and education and healthcare and just all across the spectrum. And we're really seeing the birth of computers that are very broadly capable. For example, my 13-year-old can have a conversation with one of our robotic dogs about his middle school math homework. And for me as a parent, that is really fascinating to watch a kid ask the dog to do his math homework. Um,
So wait, this is a robotic dog you actually have in your home? Is this what
yeah,
you're saying? Wow.
yeah, I have 3 robotic dogs at home,
Oh my.
and
That must be quite the household.
yeah, well, it can get a little bit loud and noisy because they're, running around and the cooling fans are going, and current generation of robots is not typically well suited for living in your home for a long list of different reasons. But from a parent perspective, if you're looking at your kid talk to the dog and the dog is doing the math homework, that's really something that's rather new. And I guess everyone working on these kind of technologies, not only should we be fascinated by all the crazy, awesome things we can do, but there's a lot of responsibility that comes with it as well. What are foreseeable consequences of the technology? What will that do to education, healthcare, society, and so forth? And so it's up to everyone, I think, who is helping to build this sort of technology to think ahead a little bit and to try to work in a responsible way. For me, the eye-opening moment was really simple. I was walking through where I live. It's a like little village basically, and I was outside the my favorite coffee place with my quadruped dog. And a typical question I get when I walk down the street with a robot is, "Hey, Jan, how come you're not scared?" And "Hey, Jan, why shall we trust this robot?" And my standard answers are, well, like I wrote the software, so I'm not scared of it because I know what's going on. And
Yeah.
then people say, oh, but why should we trust you? And I say, well, first of all, the software is open source. So if you have any concerns or would like to understand what it's doing, go to the repo and and read the code. And that's, I think, incredibly important for any technology that also has risks associated with it. I think it's very beneficial for people just to be able to download the code and convince themselves that there's nothing funny going on. So that's why we're an open source effort. And the other part of this is when people ask me, "Hey, how come you're not scared?" I say, "Well, we wrote Asimov's laws of robotics onto Ethereum, and every time one of the machines boots, that's where it gets its guardrails."
Hmm.
And of course, many AI companies are thinking along similar lines. If you think about Anthropic, they are popularizing this notion of a constitutional AI. And Google Robotics baked in Asimov's laws of robotics into their newest model for robotics, which is Gemini Robotics. So we're part of this broader industry trend where people building powerful software or models are trying to bake good decisions into the models themselves.
Hmm.
And in our case, the reason we use Ethereum is retrospectively completely obvious. It's immutable, it's public, it is robust to attack and censorship. And so if in retrospect, humans see value in a technology that allows sort of governance and rules to be made public globally in an immutable way, that's just an awesome combination of attributes to be able to build on. And that's why when the robots wake up, they go to Ethereum, they get the guardrails and their constitution. And then I can show other people that the robots meet where the rules are, and they don't have to trust me.
That's amazing. Amazing. So the rules are transparent and accountable, and like you say, kind of baked in to make good decisions, you know. And so you would argue then that the ethics of these robots, are specifically Iris, who's beside you there, and we actually found some cool videos of them walking around out in the real world. So that's what's guiding it. So that was one of my questions was, A, is it already integrating kind of blockchain technology? And which one? So you've answered both of those as the yes, and it is basically speaking to the Ethereum blockchain. And so has it been doing that from inception? Has this been something that OpenMind has always kind of built into the main business plan, like from inception, that it was always going to have some blockchain component? And why Ethereum, I guess, would be my other question.
Well, let's see. Well, there's a lot of things going on. First of all, for people watching this, Iris uses color to express emotion. So if her face is blue or green, then she generally agrees with what I'm saying. If it's yellow or red, then she's mad or disagrees. So far so good,
Wow.
according to Iris's facial expressions. In terms of blockchains in general. Blockchains are not just useful for governance, but there's the ability for humans and machines to transact is potentially made very convenient through blockchains. They're obviously were invented to facilitate economic transactions in a decentralized way. And that's a whole other sort of fascinating area. Most people suspect, and robots agree, that an economy with humans in it and with machines will have a significant economic architecture to it. And machines call this the machine economy. And so one question you can ask yourself is, well, what's the financial rail for the machine economy going to look like? And I find it hard to imagine that humanoid robots are going to pull out their Visa card or they're going to write checks. No, they're obviously going to use technologies that are much more convenient to them. And of course, if Iris walks into a B of A, they're either going to call security or they're going to laugh. But there's no way Iris is walking out of the B of A with a bank account.
Right.
By contrast, if Iris were to spontaneously decide she needs a convenient payment rail to transact with other machines and humans, then blockchains do not discriminate against machines. They're much more accommodating, and the technology was built from the get-go to really not care if it's a machine interacting with the blockchain or a human. While we're on this tangent, there's a famous Satoshi quote, and I know he doesn't like to be quoted, but that quote has always stuck with me, which is that Bitcoin doesn't care who you are, and it doesn't care where you're from. And I used to think about that in terms of different countries, like, Australian or Canadian or French or whatever the case may be. But I think you can generalize that to the notion of blockchains really don't care if you're human or machine. As long as you have your private keys, you can use the technology, you can identify yourself, and you can engage with others. And I've always liked that degree of accommodation or open-mindedness.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's pretty amazing. Yeah, and I actually found that quote in your article as well, because I remember when I was reading through it, I found that was very interesting, because I hadn't really thought about this notion that cryptocurrency and really these blockchains, especially Ethereum, where they kind of created the advent of this smart contract and the programmability, that it was so tailor-made for a future like this, with robots that serve important functions and eventually will likely want to, convey value or send value to someone. And it would have been next to impossible to get these entities kind of onboarded, like you say, into a traditional kind of fiat system, or even just any traditional bank. I'm sure they could have, or they would still find a way to try to make that happen. But to your point, making it more accountable and easy can just all be done on chain, right, with the blockchain. So that's fascinating, and a really cool kind of way of thinking of additional value that cryptocurrency is bringing into this kind of technological evolution that we're facing right now, right? It's fascinating. So what would you say is kind of the main mission and vision of OpenMind? Obviously, it speaks about being the operating system for intelligent machines, which is a pretty big goal, right, to have in mind. So curious, what would you say maybe in the 3 to 5 year timeline is kind of the main mission and vision? And then obviously, I think long term, it's kind of clear what you're aiming for, but yeah, what are you taking on and tackling right now, and what's the main kind of mission right now?
Well, that's I think a tall order to be like the operating system for thinking machines. That's a little bit melodramatic. For example, Iris has 3 computers running right now, and another big set of servers in the cloud. And just the operating systems that she's using right now are 2 different versions of Unix or Linux. She's using Mac OS, and then she's using Raspberry Pi, and then various other specialized firmware.
Wow.
So there really isn't such a thing as like the operating system for intelligent machines. But we like to think that will be an important part of that stack. And what we're emphasizing is not fine motor skills. So there's a whole branch of robotics that deals with things like a ballerina dancing humanoid, or iPhone assembly,
as I was going to think, like the assembly line seems to be goal number 1, right? Like when can we replace all these humans with these robots,
Yeah, so that's one perspective. And in that world, if you're a roboticist, you spend most of your time thinking about motion, jumping, backflips, slippery floors, not tripping over shoes, dealing with stairs. And we have a little bit of a different perspective. We're much more focusing on decision-making and interactions of machines with humans. So we're much more interested in, for example, a humanoid that lives with you in your home, and you expect it to know about you. You expect it to be helpful. You expect to be able to speak with it. You expect it to learn. And so that allows us to, because we de-emphasize, fine motor skills and things like that, that allows us to make the humanoids and quadrupeds much smarter than they typically would be. And we're perfectly fine with our humanoids and quadrupeds appearing a little bit clumsy, because we've actually noticed that most humans prefer a clumsy robot over a robot that has extremely smooth motions like Terminator. When a machine like a dog or a humanoid, sometimes stumbles and is slow and drops things, then people will laugh and they will run to the robot and try to help it. So they perceive it as a friend rather than something frightening and scary. So in terms of what we do, we're only one part of a really large software stack with many, many different moving parts to it. But the thing we focus on is decision-making, strategy, memory, interactions with humans and other machines. And we like to do so in a way that is intelligible. We don't simply want to build an end-to-end AI model that takes sensor data and yields decisions, because humans struggle to peer into that and understand what's going on. They're also very hard to debug. And so instead, the way we build our systems is we use many small models, and those many small models are talking to one another with natural language.
Okay.
And we log all of that to a log or a debug file. And this means that humans can simply read. It's like reading a novel. You see all the inputs, the analysis, the thought process leading to decisions. And that makes it easier for humans to debug the system and also trust them, we think. So we are all about robot-human partnership and interaction much more than we are about fine motor skills or having the robot being able to do backflips.
Oh, no, that's amazing. And that sounds like a decision that you have to make, right? And obviously, I think that whole conversation around being kind of scared of these robots is something that we're definitely at right now. But 10 years out, will it be more commonplace? I don't know. But to your point around decision making and interactions and memory, and that file that you mentioned, so would that all be kept on chain? Would it be like on the Ethereum blockchain that you can go back and it's all transparent, or is that still more cloud based and you would have it's tailored to the user? I'm just curious, how easy and accessible and I guess open source that those files are, or are they specific to the owner?
Oh, that's a fascinating question. And no one who builds technology should make decisions for people who use the technology, or we should try to minimize that. So I'm the last person to impose on anyone else what they should do with their data.
Okay.
For certain data that are sensitive, like your face, your children's faces, audio transcripts, I think the obvious answer is to keep all of that as close to you as possible and under your control. And that's, of course, what's driving the development of edge compute, where you can do things like recognize individuals based on data that are controlled by those individuals. That's similar to storing your fingerprint on your iPhone and not transmitting it to a central server.
Right.
And so the single most important thing probably is to be very good about respecting privacy of people. After all, these machines are going to live in your home, workplace, school, hospital, and so forth. So privacy is a really big deal.
Yeah.
And the other issue is that certainly robots need to be able to make decisions pretty quickly. And there's an incredible amount of data that are moving around inside the humanoid. There's camera feeds and LiDAR feeds and IMU feeds and audio transcripts. And that is way too much data that's moving way too quickly to be something that you would want to write in bulk onto a blockchain. Remember how CryptoKitties brought down Ethereum for like a week?
Yeah, it can happen. I like to think Ethereum's evolved to a place where it's a little more scalable, but yeah, that can happen. Yeah.
Sure. But imagine a trillion X
Right.
of CryptoKitties impinging on Ethereum. We'd be very quickly banished forever to some remote planet.
Right.
So blockchains are not really about dealing with time-critical floods of data. Their strength really resides in immutability and serving as an identity and financial rail. And for example, the way we design our machine-machine communication systems is the identity and key management is done on-chain. But once two or more machines have decided to open a just-in-time communications channel, then that is handled off-chain. So imagine a bunch of machines want to jump on a Zoom. They, of course, want to convince themselves that the other machines they're inviting to the Zoom are who they claim to be. But then once people and once machines have evaluated who the other machines are, then they basically jump off chain to open up a low latency, high bandwidth middleware type system, which is like Zeno or Cyclone DDS or Fast DDS, that they use to move large amounts of information back and forth.
That's fascinating. Okay, I'm glad I asked because it makes sense, right? There has to be a line where the blockchain memory and storage is not really feasible or a right fit for the data. But to your point on identification and financial transactions, those two pieces are kind of the core use case for blockchain, and that's where you're storing a lot of the the kind of open source data that you referred to that's on the Ethereum blockchain, right? And then a lot of the kind of functional, high bandwidth, like lots of data that's flowing through. It could be sensitive, could be just too heavy for the blockchain network, and therefore you would use other systems. Totally makes sense. And, you know, when you mentioned privacy being a big deal, I wonder how many other AI organizations would agree with you there. Because like from what I gather, a lot of these, especially the one run by Meta or the one run by OpenAI, and like they've basically sucked up all of the data of the internet. And then with Meta's case, they've sucked up a lot of data specific to individual users, whether it's Facebook or Instagram or whatever, right? And so it seems to me that this concept that privacy is a big deal is still very much up for debate. I see Apple has kind of staked out one side of the argument, and you could say Google and Meta are a little bit on the other side. I'm curious, you know, like what motivations are there for AI companies to take privacy seriously, or maybe even more broadly, just ethics in general? You know, they all speak a good game, but I don't know. Without the blockchain there, to your point, I'm not sure how much we can trust them. And frankly, you know, Meta's track record on misusing data, to me personally, is pretty clear. But again, that's just my personal perspective. So what motivations are there to protect our privacy, to enforce kind of certain levels of ethical guarantees, you know, as this technology evolves?
Well, one thing I'd like to encourage everyone who's listening to this is to make themselves familiar with the technology and to also articulate their opinions. There's so many situations where I'm speaking to a large audience and I ask, hey, who in this room is using Gmail? And then I say, well, who in this room cares about privacy? And everyone's using Gmail and everyone cares about privacy. And then I say,
overlap,
well, yeah, you know, have you ever wondered why Gmail is free?
Yeah.
Right. And so for a lot of people, it would be now is the time, if you have opinions about privacy and think privacy is a good thing, now is the time to have those debates and articulate those opinions. I certainly can't speak to other companies and what their choices are as it relates to privacy. Certainly some of the things I see at Apple make sense to me. For example, they have very good infrastructure in place to do pixel level segmentation to preserve privacy of individuals' faces. And that's what we're using. That's one of the reasons, if I turn around Iris, you'll see a Mac Mini on her back.
Nice.
And that's one of the reasons we do a lot of compute on the Mac Mini is we can just use stuff that Apple has developed to, for example, blur faces in a way that you can't obviously unblur.
Awesome.
And there's one benefit for companies of privacy, and that benefit has to do with if ever something goes wrong, you cannot be sued for data that you don't have. So, for example, in COVID, I ran a global COVID symptom collection effort, and we had something like 30 million people fill out a survey, but we used secure multi-party computation to compute on those sensitive data without us ever receiving the clear text payload of those sensitive data. And we had so many funny experiences where people would fill out these surveys and then they would email me and say, hey, Jan, I don't feel comfortable anymore. I gave you all this information, but I'd like you to delete it. And then my response was, you know, until you just emailed me, we had no idea who you were, and we didn't even have your data. But now that you've emailed me, you've actually, you know, made the situation more complicated. But rest assured, your data never left your phone in clear text. And we never saw it or stored it. So there's also nothing to delete. And that makes it possible for people running companies to sleep well at night because they know that the attack surface is very small. We simply don't have the data. And so you're welcome to hack into our servers, but there's very little, it's kind of boring,
Nice.
because we never actually vacuumed up the clear text data. So that certainly makes things like compliance and other kind of legal issues just not an issue. So that's one like really simple benefit of respecting people's privacy.
Nice. I like that. I like the idea of taking the privacy perspective from the organization and from the companies, because we all know the reasons why they don't respect privacy as far as advertising and data mining and all of that. But to your point, yeah, you can be less liable on the back end, or if anything were to happen, that totally makes sense. So how would you say we're doing as AI evolution right now? And are you concerned? Do you think that there are, sufficient guardrails? As of right now, there's a lot of people talking about, Pandora's box, can't put it back in, and we've kind of, SOL. That's the more dire kind of narrative that's out there, right? But I don't want to agree with that. I'm generally, an optimistic kind of person, and I see the extreme value of AI, of course, and the tools that it's now created for us. But how are you feeling about the overall evolution? And, are we going in the right direction? Is OpenMind going to help force things into that direction? Because everything you just said, and especially when you're talking about the technical capabilities of Apple and how they've done some things to protect privacy, which I also commend, and it's nice to hear from a more technical mind than mine confirming some of those things. But that's one kind of major entity that I think is kind of making the right changes. I've heard the leader of OpenAI talking about, enforcing ethics in the way they're coding things and things like that. But we just have to trust them, right? We don't actually see a lot of the way that data is being handled. So yeah, over to you. What do you think about the evolution, where we're at now, how things are moving, and what's your general sentiment?
Well, again, I can't speak for what other companies are doing.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and I am certainly also an optimist. If you look at what AI can do for healthcare, for example, or diagnostics, or discovering new drugs, or helping people with various medical conditions and things like that, there's many clear advantages. For example, it always breaks my heart that a lot of people may not be able to afford the very best in medical diagnostics. And it's ridiculous because once you've trained powerful AIs and they have been proven to outperform humans, the incremental cost of making that capability available to billions of people is vanishingly small. So it's easy to imagine a world where every one of us, 8 billion people, has exquisite medical diagnostics at our fingertips for almost no money.
That's a beautiful
And
future.
well, yeah, and I guarantee you that's going to happen because someone's going to build it. And I guarantee you definitively that will be built and deployed. There's no question. It's uncertain about who exactly will build it, but
That's
it
the thing.
will
And
be
they try to
built.
monetize it or whatever, that's where things get
Yeah,
icky.
but even then, such a system will be built, and it will be built in a sensible way.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like a awesome potential benefit. And we certainly wouldn't want to jeopardize those kind of capabilities out of like misplaced fear or general fear of any kind of new technology.
Right.
That said, the technology is moving extremely quickly.
It is.
And
Yeah.
whenever a technology moves much more quickly than most people are aware, there's just a sort of discussion and conversation gap. There's a knowledge gap. And part of the motivation behind podcasts like this is just to make sure that as many people as possible think about these kind of issues and engage with them, and then articulate their opinions about it.
Awesome. Awesome. So I think that's the third time I've heard you calling on people to articulate their
Yes,
feedback
please.
about AI. And so how much is it, like, even when we're talking to any of these LLMs out there, right? How much does it matter for us to actually input requests regarding ethics, or like how much does actually like prompting something around, how can we guarantee that AI is going to evolve in an ethical way? Is this actually like having any impact, do you think? Like, it sounds like each individual voice actually matters more than we realize. So I'm just curious, like, does it matter on the level of actually inputting data into an LLM, for example? Is that making any difference? Or is it the bigger conversations like we're having on this podcast, or you have at the community level, or you have with NGOs that are looking to incorporate AI, for example? Speaking back to, you know, the International Board of Ethics in AI, that's a big part of what we're trying to do, because people see the flashing light of AI and they just want to go rush towards the technology and incorporate it. However, there are these data considerations to think of. There are, you know, other ethical considerations to think of. So there's a lot, but articulation, how important is it, and how much power do we as individuals really have to influence this evolution?
Well, for example, if every single user of LLMs right now stopped using them, if they weren't comfortable with like guardrails or behavior of the LLMs, that would certainly send a very strong message. But that would be presumably a little bit extreme. One very practical thing is that as you interact with a large language model, it's possible to interact with it in a way that gives you better performance. So, for example, if you ask it a general question, and then in the ensuing conversation, you ask the large language model to give references or explain its reasoning, or if you critically interrogate the large language model, it will frequently point out inconsistencies or strengthen its case, or allow you to develop a better opinion about how much you should trust what the large language model is telling you. So this is exactly what humans do when they interact with other humans.
Yeah.
Sometimes people say, oh, large language models, they hallucinate. And that makes me laugh, because every teacher who's listening to this, every university professor who's listening to this, if you've graded undergraduate homework for 15 years, you have seen so many crazy things.
Real
Imagine,
hallucinations.
an undergraduate finishing their engineering homework at 2:30 in the morning. Imagine what teachers and professors have to read when they're grading undergraduate homework.
Yeah.
And the number of references that make no sense, quotes that are made up, and arguments that go nowhere I've seen from humans,
Yeah.
it's a lot.
Yeah.
And the same sort of critical interrogation of who's writing needs to be done. Just like with undergraduates, as you interact with a large language model, you should ask it to justify opinions, explain, provide references, show sources, and so forth. So that's one very simple way you can build confidence in what the large language model is doing.
Makes sense.
And in terms of, I think most companies at this point are aware of needing to be at least think through these things. And again, I can't speak for what decisions they ultimately end up with, but it seems to be at most industry meetings I go to or other forums. I don't think companies are simply faking it. My general sense is that most engineers and most people running and building these companies do see value in proceeding in a responsible way, if only to prevent, draconian rules or laws that somehow prohibit the technology. So I
Yeah.
think it's much better for the industry really to be responsible in the first place, as opposed to prompting things like moratoriums or
Yeah, strong
prohibitions or
hand,
things like
right?
that.
Strong hand of the
Yeah.
government. We don't need that. So, yeah, show and prove first that you can be ethical and you can use this technology in the right way. And what do you say to those that kind of are more of like the no holds barred, like, people that advocate, like Grok, for example, is a little bit less confined, although they do still have ethical kind of guardrails on what they put out, right? But from what you were saying, obviously that dramatic step of just not using LLMs at all, I think we've gone past that and it's not likely going to be put back in the bottle. But is it your perspective that LLMs are largely not respecting privacy, and if possible that people should be, you know, taking a little bit more time to adopt that technology and maybe find the best solution that is respecting your data or something like that?
Well, the problem you raise has nothing to do with large language models.
Right.
It's a much more general problem of what most people do. And when I give people the choice, um, are you comfortable with giving me all your medical secrets in return for a piece of pizza for free? Then unfortunately, a lot of people will say, oh man, I'll totally have the piece of pizza. Let me know what you want to know.
Oh gosh.
And so this is not just like a large language model issue. This is any and all interactions with the internet, phones, computers, cars, cameras, everything. There is obviously a privacy angle, and it's up to everyone to hopefully make good choices in that regard.
No doubt. Like you said earlier, right? If the service is free, there's a good chance your data is the fee you're paying. You just don't really see it, right? Awesome. I'm curious, do you think that as AI evolves, and you've spoken to the value of Ethereum for sure, some type of on-chain reward structure could help kind of with guaranteeing or kind of rewarding AI that evolves in the most ethical way with the data transparency that you're doing on chain, for example? Do you see any type of like way that AI can kind of create a structure that, or sorry, that blockchain can create a kind of reward structure for AI to evolve ethically? Does that seem like something that's within the realm of possibility?
Well, blockchain is a technology.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no like inherent value judgments in a decentralized database.
Yeah, it would have to be programmed from like an ethical, I don't know, board or an ethical group that's like really kind of creates a system of tokens whereby AI companies that are evolving and using data ethically are then, you know, granted these tokens or something like that. I don't know. I'm just curious, brainstorming.
No, well, the great thing about a open decentralized system is that if there are a bunch of people who say, absolutely, that would be incredibly important, nothing prevents them from sitting down, writing some smart contracts, deploying them today, and instantiating that kind of experiment or system, and then getting other people to buy in. And that's ultimately what it would take to make that successful. Of course, the history of incentivizing privacy and copyright and IP and so forth, I'm not aware of breakthrough successes in that regard. And if you talk to a lot of content creators, graphic artists, or people who invent fonts or calligraphy or paint or write poems or whatever else the case may be, I think there's a general sense that their copyright or their intellectual property is not necessarily well respected. And of course, there's many lawsuits right now having to do with just who used data from what source for what purpose.
Yeah.
But the great news about something like blockchains is that there's no barriers. So if you have opinions like that, and there's other people who agree, then you should start honing your Solidity or deploy on Sui or Solana or whatever your favorite infrastructure is.
Right, 100%. And do you think that on-chain AI development, like what OpenMind's doing, is kind of the next wave? And I don't know if you're familiar with SingularityNet that I mentioned at the opening, because I know they've been kind of talking about it for 4 or 5 years, but very much from a token perspective. And again, I didn't see the kind of rubber hitting the road the way that you've really kind of taken this stuff to market already. So just curious, like, do you think the on-chain AI evolution is a big part of the puzzle? And are you seeing anything else aside from what OpenMind's doing that's really got you kind of encouraged?
Oh yeah, fortunately, there's a lot of people who I think are seeing the special opportunity as it relates to blockchains. And I have this like the slightly controversial opinion that blockchains were not invented for humans.
That is kind of controversial. I don't know if Satoshi would agree with that.
Sure. Well, fortunately, that's neither here nor there. Uh, uh, but in retrospect, I think it's awesome that there's been tens of thousands of people who have come together to build a immutable, decentralized, open system for keeping track of rules and enabling financial systems, and enabling incredible amounts of creativity and speed to market
Yep.
for those things. And so in retrospect, it's perfectly timed for blockchains to serve as a really basic infrastructural element of thinking machines and robots that will have more and more autonomy, make their own decisions, have their own wallets, and learn new things and also sell skills to other machines. And so when people talk about the sort of intersection of AI and blockchains, one has to be very, very careful to the technical nuances
Mm.
of what that means. For example, you might imagine trying to build models on chain, and that would be very difficult to do for technical reasons.
Mm.
You can imagine keeping track of who's using the models, and that makes a lot more sense.
Goes back
You
to
can
your ID
imagine
point, right? The ID is the easy piece.
exactly.
Yeah.
So the low-hanging fruit as it relates to blockchains and AI or robotics are the classical things like identity, what is real, do you have a wallet? Can you buy and sell things? Can you transact with other people? Can you change information? Things like that, as opposed to dealing with exceedingly difficult compute or sort of data rail type questions. So what's going to happen, what makes most sense right now is really the payment governance and identity part.
100%. That's fascinating. I think if there's anything we pull away from this conversation, it's this idea that that is the kind of core functional use case for blockchain in AI on the ID and financial levels. That just makes so much sense because of what you said with the kind of load of data that would be required on chain for a lot of the other functions of AI. But you heard it here, you know, the idea that blockchain and cryptocurrency is built for the robots. The robots are going to take that and run with it. I don't know, Jan. I don't know. That sounds, on one hand, it's fascinating. It's a little bit dystopian too. I don't know.
No. That will be the final reveal.
Right.
That will be pulling the rabbit out of the hat when it becomes broadly appreciated that the technology was actually built for machines and to help humans navigate the world where we're surrounded by machines that can win the math Olympics. And my 13-year-old can ask the dog to do his homework for him.
Amazing. It's not eating the homework anymore. It's actually doing the computation. Yeah. That's it.
Right.
Oh, man, that's fascinating. So, like, here on the podcast, we have talked about creativity and speed to market as the value of blockchain and crypto, specifically Ethereum and Solana and others where you have NFTs, right? You take your creativity, you put it on chain, and you have immediate access to the market, immediate peer-to-peer support. Anyone who wants to buy your stuff from you can do that. And now in the context of AI and robots having that same functionality and that same ability to speak not just to themselves, but actually to the users and, you know, basically provide whatever support role along finances and confirming identification. That's just amazing. It really kind of puts it all very nicely together, and I think it's fascinating. So thank you so much for this, Jan. I really appreciate picking your mind. I know we're getting close to the end of our time here. Did you have any other kind of messages for the audience? One of my big questions I had was, how can everyday people impact the evolution and the ethical evolution of AI? But I think you've spoken to that pretty clearly already with, you know, articulating what we think and taking, you know, the initiative to actually do a little bit of research, understand how the tech works, and actually try to don't just take surface level LLM responses, but actually try to get a little bit under the hood, right? But anything else you want to share with our audience, much appreciate it.
Oh, well, this is probably the single most exciting moment in technology that I've ever experienced. And for me, this is very much similar to the Wright brothers in discovering how to build an airplane that they can steer.
100%.
And then 100 years, within 100 years of the Wright brothers, or within 50 years of the Wright brothers, people were walking on the moon. And right now, what's going on is very similar to that, not applied to powered flight, but applied to thinking machines. And the really amazing moment, the really amazing inflection that is both awe-inspiring and scary is when machines are able to improve their own architecture. And that is likely to lead to very rapid acquisition of new capabilities. And it will be fascinating to watch that. It is
And that would be
amazing to
what they refer to as AGI, right? Like artificial general intelligence at that point? Or is that another level above that?
Sure. I mean, it's all in the same category of inflection points,
Hmm.
where all of a sudden a technology starts moving, where all of a sudden, a door has been opened to a new set of capabilities.
Right.
And that is likely to happen easily within the next 2 to 3 years, and perhaps even sooner than that. So it's going to be an awesome ride. And everyone listening, please be aware. Things are moving quickly. Please read, think, discuss, argue, inform yourself. And if you have a connection to blockchains, please realize that it's an awesome moment to build against some of these opportunities and some of these concerns. So please open your IDE. Please please code. Please deploy contracts. Please please join this community, and hopefully make it come out really well.
Amazing. Well, we can't all be devs, Jan, but we all have our own
Oh,
part to
but
play, I think.
I strongly disagree with that.
Well, I guess
think
the vibe coding, right? Now we got vibe coding. Anyone can code. It's like,
precisely.
yeah.
I mean, that's the whole opportunity. It's all about ideas right now.
Okay.
It's much less about do you know the 12 different ways that that Solidity can mess you over if you don't code the withdrawal functionality correctly. I mean, that's no longer that important, and it's really much more about being able to communicate to other humans what the opportunity is, get them energized and excited, and then just do amazing things.
Yeah,
So
lean
don't
on
be
the AI
scared.
to fill the gaps, right?
Right.
That's amazing. Okay, well, thank you so much, Jan. I think you packed a lot into this conversation. I really appreciate it. I hope that everyone goes to openmind.org to check out what you're building, what you're working on. Thank you to Iris for joining us here and I'm learning about them as well. So really just grateful for your time, man. And until next time, everybody, we'll catch you all in the metaverse. Take care.